All right, so this is going to be the beginning of Unit 6, Cities and Urban Land Use. So this is 6.1, and the title is The Origin and the Influences of Urbanization. So like what causes cities to be located where they're at, and like what causes cities to grow and change over time. I apologize for my eye. Like I look like a mess. I don't know what happened to my eye this morning. But it's a disaster. So it's been this way all day. So my apologies. All right. So here's our kind of our objectives. Explain the process that initiate and drive urbanization and suburbanization. Site and situation influence the origin, so where they come from, the function and the growth of cities, and then changes in transportation and communication, population growth, migration, economic development, and government policies influence urbanization. It influences why some cities get bigger and other cities get smaller. Okay, so you guys have all seen the movie Cars, right? And the Cozy Cone was the motel in Cars, right? And then they used to be a thriving city, right? It was a big deal, but then all of a sudden they weren't anymore, right? That's because their situation changed, right? Radiator Springs in the movie was suffering hard times, right? Because Tow Mater thought that a new road would help the town, right? So people would be able to, that would change their situation because people would be able to get in and out of there easier, right? So the reason their situation changed is because they built a new interstate, and Radiator Springs was along Route 66, which is fine. But then they built the new interstate system. So like Highway 44, like it was a superhighway, well, it bypassed all those small towns that were along Route 66. So Radiator Springs, which is a fictional town, but it changed. So their situation changed. They weren't connected with the outside world the way they used to be. Okay. So there's two things. There's site and situation, right? Site is the characteristics of an immediate location. It's the specifics. So like what's the climate? What's the soil fertility like? What's the availability of water? And a lot of these site characteristics were a long time ago, thousands of years ago, and why the city emerged where it did, right? Even a city like St. Louis has been here for hundreds of years, maybe even into the thousands of years. If you go back to Native American times in what is now the United States. So the situation, right? So the site is a specific factors like climate, soil fertility, availability of water. The situation is how it relates to other places that are around it. So how does it connect with other places? So when Tow Mater wants to build a new road to get people in and out of the town, well, that's changing the situation because now you're going to have a better road to get in and out, right? So that's how it connects with that. Now, let's go into some other examples. Like, why is St. Louis there, right? So a site factor of why St. Louis even started was there's water, right? So you could get water from the Mississippi River. You could get water from nearby springs that were around. There was also extremely fertile land right across the river. There was fertile land all over around St. Louis, right? The situation of St. Louis is that it became a center of trade routes, okay, along the rivers, because the Illinois River flows in up by Alton. Okay, the Missouri River flows in up there too. So just down below that is where St. Louis is located because it's along those trade routes. So you could get here from the east, you could get there from the west. So the situation was really good. It was near food producing areas. Later on, it became along the train, the Intercontinental Railroad, okay, that went across the country. And then, of course, it was the gateway to the West. So when the pioneers were coming through, they'd go through St. Louis. That's why we have the arch. Okay. So, and then the arch is something too, like it changes the situation a little bit because now that's going to bring tourists to the city. So it causes the growth of St. Louis, which was like 50 years ago when they built the arch. So, and then today if you think about all the interstates that go in there, it's also a center of transportation for the interstates. So as time goes on, they become more and more connected, right? So their situation changes over time. So this is the city of Istanbul today, and you can see all the different forms of transportation there with the boats and the cars. There's no airport in there, but they have tons of airports, right? You can also see the cultural landscape in there with the mosque there right above my head. Right there. And then the way the buildings are built, right? It's a major city. This is Istanbul, which is in Turkey, right? So here is their situation. Okay, the site would be, right, that there's water nearby. There has to be a food source somewhere. Okay, the situation is its location. So they are connected via water by the Black Sea with Russia. Okay, and if you're going to go from Russia in a warm water port to get out to the Mediterranean Sea and then make it out to the Atlantic Ocean, right? Well, if you're going to go this way from Russia, okay, you got to get through these two things, the Bosporus and the Dardanelles, then get down here, okay, and then go all the way out this direction, okay, out through what is then the this, oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank, but there's another important chokehold right there, a strait. It'll come to me. So there's two here, right? So where this is located, there's Istanbul again. I'll circle it again, right? That situation is amazing, right? It was a major trading route a long, long time ago. Okay, and it was along the Silk Road that would bring the silk from Asia all the way over here, right? And then they could transport that to Africa, right? And they could also transport it to major places in Italy and major places in France. So there was a super hub, okay, for those things. All right. I mean, I can't believe that I can't think of that straight right now. It's driving me nuts. All right, so urbanization itself is an ongoing process that doesn't end once the city's formed. Like urbanization continues in St. Louis, urbanization continues in Belleville. Okay, the suburbanization, I guess it's urbanization going on in downtown with the changes. Benny's Pizza, if you remember Benny Parr from the 5 Question Friday, he's moving across the street into a whole new space. Big Daddy's has got a new space. There's a new wedding facility called Spaces, right? A big party facility. And all of that's on Main Street. It's always changing, right? I went to White Cottage today, and down by White Cottage, there's two buildings that are no longer there that the owners of White Cottage have purchased, right? So things are constantly changing. 50% of the world today lives in an urban setting, right? So why do cities grow? Okay, why do cities decline? Because some cities actually decline. So they change, right? Transportation routes change. People move to suburbs because it's easier to get in and out of the city. Okay, there's mass transit that'll make it easier to get in and out. There's interstates, right? Like we get to St. Louis on Interstate 64. Okay, or Interstate 40, they call it over there. So it makes it easier. People move to the cities, right? Because they always move to the cities. Remember the migration unit, because there's more jobs available. Okay. Well, they also move there because there's cool stuff to do. Like there's concerts, there's sporting events, there's theater, there's all kinds of things that draw people to those places. So migration, Lourdes first went to Los Angeles, right? Because she figured that she could find a job there, and she could, right? The government's passed sustained development laws. They can't go beyond a certain area, so cities grow up, not out. When we get into later in this unit, you'll see some examples, like in Portland, Oregon. Government agencies approve mortgages for families to buy homes. They make it easier to go to certain areas because they want to encourage development. Like if you want to move to downtown St. Louis, you might have a better chance of getting a loan than you would if in some other place. There's also something called white flight. People move from cities to suburbs. And lately, the white flight has been from suburbs to further suburbs, right, away from the urban core. Like people leaving Florissant in Missouri to go to St. Charles. And so St. Charles is booming in population, right? So that's how those changes take place. We'll talk more about that later. Okay, so here's a great example, right? The changes in transportation, streetcars, right? If you lived in an era when there was only streetcars, then you had to live near the city center. Cars, people moved to the suburbs then because they had a car and they could travel back and forth. So the suburbs became the place to be. And then once highways were developed, businesses then could move out to the suburbs. Businesses could ship goods easier. So that change, right, changes the city. Businesses didn't have to be in the downtown urban core anymore. So in communication, landlines, right, gave people more options to conduct business because you could talk easier to people and communicate instead of having to visit them physically. Cell phones and the internet, right? So now you can do international business easier. Amazon doesn't exist without the internet, right? So 5G, if that happens all over the place, right? Do we even need to have cities anymore? And what we're seeing with the pandemic is changing things a little bit. Do we need to drive to St. Louis to do our job? Or can we do it because we have 5G and we have communication to do what I'm doing right now? Okay, so those changes, right, will cause changes to cities. So government policies can also do this. Cities were begging Amazon a few years ago. In fact, this class did a project. The seniors currently did a project about bringing Amazon to St. Louis and the things that St. Louis was doing. I mean, they were literally talking about giving Amazon like high-rise buildings in St. Louis. They were begging them to come in, giving them tax breaks and incentives, and they had a whole video production and all this stuff welcoming Amazon. St. Louis wasn't a finalist, and I don't even know if they did it, if Amazon made a place an official hub, but the stuff that they were throwing at them was crazy because of the amount of money that it would bring to the area. So reurbanization is a term where suburbanites, people that live in the suburbs, return to the city for numerous reasons. If they want older style homes, if the schools there have improved, people will move back. There's all kinds of reasons for people moving back in. We'll get into a bunch of terms for that. Exurbanites are people that move further away from the urban area and work remotely. So what I said earlier about like people that used to live in Florissant, Missouri, now moved to St. Charles, okay, that is exurbanization. So they can only do that because of technology and being able to get around a little bit easier. A satellite city is an established town near a large city, and it grows to be its own independent and larger city, kind of like Minneapolis and St. Paul are satellite cities of each other. Cairo, Egypt, and Alexandria, Egypt are another, and Giza is another one that are satellite cities there. So the city develops because other cities nearby make it happen. Kind of like Colorado Springs a little bit compared to Denver, right? Denver boomed, and then Colorado Springs has boomed. Golden, Colorado's done the same thing. Okay, and then you guys will take a look at one of these videos for your Ed puzzle, and that will be it.